This is a lesson on programming for absolute beginners. And one of the things that we are going to learn about is that programming is fun. And the only prerequisite for this lesson is that you should know how to turn on a computer. And this dialogue is a tribute to Professor Mehran Sahami, who's a Stanford professor. And I took his course in first year of my college. That's the programming methodology course, and it's available on YouTube. In this lesson, we won't focus about learning a new language. Instead, we will be focusing about getting the fundamentals and basics right. And we will go with C++ and use an online platform. So you don't need to install anything because we will be using an online platform. And in the lessons further, you will realize what platform to go to. You need to remember that programming is an art, and it's an art of making stuff possible by writing code. And think of a code or a programming language as colors and pastel, where your final program is the painting. So when you want to draw a painting, your final product is what a program is, and the art of painting is like the art of programming, of making that final product happen. And you use that using lines of code or a programming language through which you will write these lines of code. And you will soon realize that programming can make magic happen. So today, what we are going to go is we are going to go back a little and realize what were the tasks of the first few computers invented. And the basic tasks, like even if you go years back, the first computer performed basic calculations and then later on advanced calculations. Think of it like the first computer was technically a calculator. So so that's what we are going to build today. And forget about everything else. We are not going to go into the theory. We are going to directly go into building this calculator. And while we are building this, we will go to the basic concepts that you need to learn. And what will a calculator do today? It will add two numbers which the user is going to give it. For example, think of a calculator as an app. When you use the calculator app on your phone, you're going to enter two numbers. Okay, this is the first number and this is the second number that I want to add. And then the calculator will show you the sum of these two numbers. So let's call our program calculator. What will this program do? This program will take two numbers and display on your app or on your screen the sum of these two numbers. How will it do it? This is the tricky part which we'll get to, and we'll have to write it. So don't worry about the syntax. You must have heard different programming languages, but unlike languages in the real world, they essentially convey the same meaning. So when you say hello in English, it can be said in 20 other ways in 20 different languages, but it always means hello. So don't worry about one particular programming language, and don't worry about mugging up a syntax of one particular language. Once you know the basic fundamentals of programming, you can learn any language that you want. So how will it do it? The user enters two numbers and the calculator prints the sum of these two numbers. And what do we need? Now start thinking that you want to build this program that will calculate two numbers. So now start thinking that when the user gives you the first number, you need some place to store that first number. Even when you're writing or calculating two numbers, if these are small numbers, you store it in your head. So if you say 9 plus 5 is 14, so in your head you stored 9 at one place, you stored 5 at one place, and then you calculated the sum. So if these are big numbers, if I ask you to say 1235 plus 8914, you will need to write down these numbers first. And when you are writing down, that means on a piece of paper you are storing these numbers. So similarly, our program will need to store the first number and the second number. And then it needs to store the third number because it needs to display on screen the sum which was stored in the third number. So think it like this. Think of everything like you're storing somewhere. So The user, you wrote on that app the first number, you gave it to that, so it's stored somewhere. Then you gave the second number. Then what it did was it calculated the sum of the first number and the second number. So let's go ahead and let's learn some commands. So our program will be a series of commands that we'll give to it. And let's learn some programs. These are not pertaining to any particular language. These are basic commands that we will learn to clear the fundamentals of programming. The first program command is input a number. Whenever you say input a number, what it does is it takes a number from the user. And when you say display a number and in brackets n, it displays the number to the user and the number is n. So we'll worry about what n is in the next slide, but you need to remember that this particular command takes a parameter. Don't get confused or something like that. Parameter is something basically to do what it's supposed to do. It needs n to do what it's supposed to do. So to display a number, it needs n, which is the number that it needs to display. So now what we need to realize is that we'll introduce variables. And again, don't worry about the concept. But this introducing variables will actually come in the part 2 of this lesson. So in the part 2 of this lesson, we'll be introducing variables. So this was a very, so hop on to the part 2 of the lesson and where we'll program our first calculator.